Hello, I'm Matt and I'd like to welcome you to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be discussing Chapter 6 in my book, Deciding for Life, How I Lost 70 Pounds Without Working Out and While Still Eating Foods That I Love. And Chapter 6 is titled, What I Eat. And Chapter 6 is going to talk about my system days when I'm working on losing weight and not my cheat days. But before we get started, I'm going to throw this backpack that has 70 pounds of lead in it on my back and go for a woods walk. And you may wonder, why would a guy throw a 70-pound backpack or a backpack with 70 pounds of lead in it on his back and go for a walk and talk on YouTube? Well, one, it's a great reminder to me of how much better I feel when I'm not 70 pounds overweight. And two, which is really more important, hopefully it inspires you, if you're substantially overweight, to find a healthy way, and not necessarily the deciding for life way, to get your weight to a healthy and happier and yes, lighter state. So let's get the backpack on and we'll get started. Okay, here we go. But before I get started, I have to give a quick disclaimer. I am not a medical professional and I provide no medical advice. My goal with this YouTube channel and my book, Deciding for Life, How I Lost 70 Pounds Without Working Out and While Still Eating Foods That I Love, is to inspire you to find a happier and healthier way to live your lifestyle, and yes, a lighter way. With all that being said, it's just inspiration. I'm not giving any medical advice, and if you see anything in my book or on my YouTube channel that you want to try, make sure you consult with your doctor before you do so, because something that works and is healthy for me may not work or be healthy for you. So do that if you want to try anything that you see on my YouTube channel or in my book. Now on to Chapter 6. Deciding for Life, What I Eat. And like I said, this is specifically about what I eat on my system days. One of the benefits that I have, at least for me, is that I don't need a whole lot of variety in my foods. And, I pretty much save my variety for my cheat days. So I eat good 6 days a week, and then I have a cheat day once a week. But on my system days, I don't have a whole lot of variety. We do, eat some different things during the week, but like for, simple things like breakfasts and snacks, I typically don't change them up very much. When I started my Deciding for Life system, I used a sandwich for breakfast that I'd used when I did the Body for Life system, I believe the first time. And basically what it consisted of was one egg, microwaved in one of the microwavable egg cookers, round, on 2 pieces of toast, whole wheat toast. And that was what I initially started with for my breakfasts. And that's evolved a little bit over time, partially because I read some articles talking about, or I think actually I saw a YouTube short that was talking about all the preservatives that are in a typical loaf of bread. And I went and looked at the back of a typical loaf of bread, and sure enough, there is a whole bunch of preservatives in a typical whole wheat bread. And on top of that, there's a bunch of things you can't even, pronounce, let alone know what the heck they are. So I decided to start making my own whole wheat bread. Well, one of the things I learned about making my own whole wheat bread is, one, it only requires, I think, five total ingredients versus the multitude of ingredients that are in your typical, store-bought whole wheat bread. And when I first made my very first loaf, I noticed, dang, this loaf is a lot heavier than, the store-bought bread. And it's a lot denser bread when you make it. And with that, I found something else out that was kind of interesting. I couldn't eat 2 pieces with my egg in the morning and have the same weight loss benefits. And what I really believe it is the bread is probably a little bit more nutritious because it does weigh a whole lot more. So there's, or at least it weighs a bit more. I don't remember exactly what the difference in weight was, but there is a substantial difference in the weight. And it's a lot denser, and I think there's more nutrients in it. So what I ended up doing for my breakfast is I decided to go to, changing to an omelet. And initially, I'd have one piece of my homemade whole wheat bread with an omelet. And later on, as I kind of progressed and read some more articles on that, I started thinking, I needed to add some more vegetables and, grains into my diet. And I'm really not the kind of person that really enjoys eating those things. I didn't grow up eating them. It wasn't a big thing in our family to eat vegetables. So just really wasn't something that I was accustomed to. So I decided I wanted to start adding onions and peppers to my omelet in the morning. And I started doing that, and then I started adding spinach, and, baby spinach. And one of the things I really don't care for onions, and I really don't care for peppers, and I really don't care for baby spinach. So I decided, well, I do like a lot of different spices. I like hot spices specifically. So I decided to make up what I call my Matt's Mix, which is a combination of several different spices. They range from the not so spicy cinnamon, the cayenne pepper, paprika, ginger, and turmeric, because turmeric is supposed to have some health benefits, and some of these other specific spices are supposed to have health benefits that are supposed to also deter some of the hunger, because that is one thing that you deal with when you're trying to lose weight, is hunger. So if you can find something that reduces those hunger feelings, I really don't think that's a bad idea. So that's what my breakfast omelet morphed from, or my breakfast did. It was originally just 1 egg and 2 pieces of toast, and now it's typically 2 eggs, 1 piece of my whole wheat toast, and the omelet has peppers, onions, and baby spinach in it, and that works really well for me. Typically for lunch, when I started this process, I was using a Dannon Light and Fit yogurt for my lunch, and Dannon Light and Fit yogurts worked really well for me. In the past, I lost 80 pounds once when I was working for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, eating the Dannon Light and Fit yogurts. They're 12 grams of protein and only 80 calories. So, they work very well for me for my lunch, as well as for snacks throughout the day. I typically have 3 snacks during the day. I have one at, I guess lunchtime isn't really a snack, but I have I was eating the yogurt for my lunch, and I have a snack at 3 and then one at 9, which is the last time I eat for the day. So, and I like the Dannon Light and Fit yogurts, but one of the things I noticed with them is because of the bit of sugar content in them, I'd get really hungry sometimes after eating one. And, the hunger pains would come a lot quicker. And it's one of the things that I learned from reading a book. It was called The Glucose Revolution. And it's listed in my book. And I can't remember the young lady's name that wrote the book. I'll have it in the description below. But one of the things she talked about was, sugar spikes make you more hungry. So it's one of the reasons I got away from eating the Dannon Light and Fit for my lunch and for my other 2 snacks. They were convenient because you just buy them, you open them up, and you eat them. You don't have to make anything. So there is some convenience factor to that. And if I didn't switch to the protein balls that I use today, I would probably still be eating the Dannon Light and Fit yogurts because I know that it works very well for me. But I know the protein balls work a little bit better for me because I don't tend to get quite so hungry, because what she taught in her book was that when you eat something that has sugar in it, it causes a glucose spike, and then that glucose spike crashes there shortly thereafter, whereas then you get hungry again. And I do find this to seem to be the case for me. Not a medical professional. I'm not using a instant glucose monitor like she did, so I can't tell you from a medical perspective, but I know that's the way I feel. So I went from eating the Dannon Light and Fit for my lunch and my 2 snacks to making a lunch that consists of when I'm working on losing weight, one egg and the same fillings that I have in the morning with my Matt's Mix and my peppers, onions, and spinach. So that's what my lunch morphed to. I already talked a little bit about what my snacks moved to. And when I was looking for something to switch out my snack for, I found protein balls on YouTube. But when I was looking at them, a lot of them are made with dates and other things that, would add that sweetness, which is what I was trying to get away from, when switching from the Dan Enlightened Fit. So basically what I've ended up going to is, and I went through a couple different iterations before I got to this, but basically my current protein ball consists of 150 grams of pecans, about 50 or 60 grams of unsweetened coconut flakes, and about 15 to about 18 grams of 100% baker's chocolate. And I take and I mix that up in a food processor, and then I break that down into 12 servings because I have 2 snacks a day for 6 days for my week, so that's 12 snacks for the whole week. So that works out to between 120 and 130 calories. And yes, you may wonder, the Dan Enlightened Fit was only 80 calories, and I'm going up another, 40 or 50 calories. But it is in a format that doesn't break down as easily as sugar that's in the Dan Enlightened Fit yogurt. So that's one reason that I did that. And that works really well for me. I make up 12 protein balls, and then that gives me my protein balls for the week. Now, when it comes to dinners, we may have, we have mostly what a lot of people would consider very normal dinners. And, normal dinners for people that aren't trying to lose weight or on a diet. We may have, hamburgers, and I'll have that with 2 slices of my bread and a piece of cheese. Typically we'll have maybe a baked potato with it, or a lot of times we'll have beets. Sometimes we'll have rice. A lot of things that a lot of people, think that they would avoid when, working at losing weight. But when you look at how I eat the rest of the day, I have very little calories from, 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30 when I eat in the morning. 2 eggs and the spinach and the peppers and onions. That's 80, 160. That's probably about a little less than 200 calories for breakfast. Then I have the same omelet at lunch that only has 1 egg, so that takes 80 calories away from that. So then you look at my 3 o'clock snack, it's typically only a protein ball, which is 120 to 130 calories. So when you look at what I eat during the day, it really isn't that much. It's enough to tide me over through the day. It allows me to go out here and work on my property or do whatever I'm going to do for the day. And then I have what I consider a somewhat relatively normal dinner. I do try to follow the Body for Life portioning system, whereas the protein or meat is typically the size of my fist, in circumference. The carbohydrate and the vegetable is typically about the size of my, what would fit in my palm, and that has worked very well for me. I got that from doing the Body for Life system, and it works very well, at least for me in my Deciding for Life system. So that's basically, my 2 snacks during the day at 3 and 9 are typically now a protein ball. And if I wasn't making the protein ball, I'd go back to the Dan Enlightened Fit yogurts because I know how well they work. But for me, I like how the protein balls work a little bit better. It does take me about 20 minutes to make them. I take and make them, and then I put salt on them because it kind of makes them taste kind of similar to maybe like a big chocolate chip, like a potato chip, because you have the salt on there and it's chocolatey, and the chocolate and the salt seem to complement each other very well. And to me, they taste good. But a lot of what my system is about is finding what works for me in this case, and anybody else that wanted to do something similar would just have to adjust the ingredients to find out what works very well for them. One of the other reasons that I decided to kind of get away from eating as many processed foods as I can is they have so many things in them that a lot of times we don't even know what the heck they are. So there's a concern to me there, because I think of medicine and foods kind of similarly. You eat a whole bunch of different foods with a bunch of stuff in them, you don't know what they are. Anytime you watch a TV commercial about a medication, at the end of it they're always telling you all the side effects you might have, including death in a lot of instances. And I kind of wonder about foods, because there's substances you put in your body, kind of like medicines, because you put them in your body, and foods you eat for nutrition, and a lot of the same things that you take medications for. So that makes me kind of wonder what side effects different foods could have. And because of that, that's why I started, that's part of the reason I started making my own bread. And I try to cut as much of the processing out, except on my cheat day. I don't worry about it that much on my cheat day, because I really figure that one day a week I need it in order to do my system days, and two, it doesn't seem to affect me that negatively just one day a week. So if you think about food, the more things that you mix together, one food might have a side effect with another food, because you take two drugs together and sometimes they'll have negative reactions with one another that don't work out so well for you. And I kind of wonder about foods the same way, especially with all the different preservatives and stuff that they put in foods that you really don't know what they are in the first place. Layman isn't going to know. Maybe if you're a baker or a butcher or something like that, you might understand that stuff better than just a home cook like me. But I just figure it can't be, it can't be as good as not having as much in there that can interact with each other and cause negative results that I'm not looking for. One of the places that I personally saw some changes in my own body is when I quit drinking soda. When I lost 80 pounds when I was working for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, I quit drinking soda. That was one of the things I cut out. And I used to have a growth on my left eye, towards my nose, and it was getting to the point that I was thinking about having it cut off, because it kept getting bigger. Well, the strange thing is, as soon as I quit drinking soda, it went away, like in 3 or 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, something like that. Didn't take very long and it was gone. And it got me to thinking. I haven't drank soda since, because I'm not a medical professional. I can't say that there's any correlation with it. The growth going away could just be, coincidence. But to me, I'm not a big believer in coincidence. So at least for me, soda's just not something I care to drink. But it also shows what, to me at least, not from a medical perspective, but just to me, what a food may or may not do to your body. So I cut soda out. One of the things that, when I lost the 80 pounds, I quit drinking everything. I was pretty much just drinking water all week long. And we were at my aunt's house, and she went, up in Pennsylvania, and, it's cold country, so everybody drinks coffee, and I wanted to be polite, and I used to drink some coffee, not that much, but I'd typically have it with sugar and cream. And I just kind of was wondering, I've never tried it black without anything in it. And I figured, let's give it a try, see how it goes. And it was kind of strange to me, because I'd been drinking water so long, that black coffee to me actually has a little bit of a sweet taste to it. And I started drinking the coffee then black, and that's pretty much the way I drink it now. I might throw something else in it on one of my cheat days, which we'll talk about cheat days in a future chapter. But it was one of the things that I like to drink a lot of water, because I do believe that it's good to you to some extent. You do have to be careful, or at least I do have to be careful, because when I drink too much water, it has a tendency to wash the electrolytes out of me, which causes leg cramps. So I have to find a balance with water and electrolytes so that I don't end up getting the leg cramps or arm cramps or hand cramps when I'm working, or even going to sleep at night, because that's when I typically get the leg cramps. So there is some balance with the water. And I didn't really know that coffee had sodium in it, but typically if I drink a whole bunch of water and no coffee, I have a tendency to get some leg cramps. And typically the way I'd get rid of leg cramps is I'd drink a cup of chicken broth, because it's been the one thing that would get rid of them. And it's something that I read in the Atkins book, many years ago. And when I would get leg cramps, I started doing that, and it worked very well, because typically by about the time I finished drinking the chicken broth, which a lot of people think it has way too much sodium in it, and it may, but at least for me, it gets rid of the leg cramps, which can get pretty excruciating. So, but now that I've really been working at balancing out the electrolytes and how much water I drink, I don't seem to have that much of an issue with leg cramps anymore. One of the other things that really works well for me is I started cooking for myself. Now, this thing about making my own bread and making my own omelets, it does take a little bit of time, but you at least have control of what's going in it. And it actually makes it a lot more interesting, when you're cooking for yourself. Because when somebody else cooks for you all the time, you just kind of have a tendency to eat whatever they put in front of you. And that can have supremely negative effects, because if the person cooking for you really likes to eat lots of carbohydrates, you're going to have a tendency to eat lots of carbohydrates. But once you start cooking for yourself and splitting up meals, me and my wife, we'll split up dinner. I typically cook my own breakfast, and she usually does her own thing for lunch, because she has a different idea of what she wants to eat, and that's fine, because we all have to find what works for each individual, each of us. So I typically cook, breakfast. If it's cheat day, I usually cook lunch as well, and dinner unless we go out. But it just makes it so much more interesting when you're cooking for yourself, because you get to experiment with things. Now, one of the experiments I did here recently was some cinnamon and allspice bread. Before that, I did some cinnamon and nutmeg bread, and it was interesting, but I think I like the allspice better. The next one I'm going to do is using my Matt's Mix spices to see what a hot and spicy bread tastes like. But that's one of the nice things about cooking for yourself. You can make all sorts of different things that make eating different things that, at least in my whole wheat bread, seem to be more healthy for me. And it makes it more interesting to do so. And the experimenting, some of them come out good, some of them not so good. But you know what? It makes it a whole lot more interesting and gives you a whole lot more control over what you end up putting in your pie hole. Let's see. One of the things that I got from the glucose revolution was apple cider vinegar. And when I was losing weight, I was drinking the apple cider vinegar a bit after I read her book. And I kind of think it does some good. But, I'm not the most consistent on stuff like that. So, I've used the apple cider vinegar kind of off and on, and right now I'm kind of off with it, because it's just an extra thing to try to remember throughout the day. And, I have my weight pretty well under control, so I'm really not that concerned about, the apple cider vinegar right now. And if I see something that I need to change, it's something that I can always go back to. Another thing that I got from the glucose revolution was eating a high fiber item before you have a sweet, or a high protein item before you have a sweet, because that knocks off that glucose spike and doesn't allow as many of the calories to go into your body from the way she explained it in her book. So one of the things I started doing was putting an omelet, with a bunch of cheese and stuff in it, in front of my sweet breakfast. And one of the other things that she talks about is eating your vegetables first. When you're eating your food, you eat it in a specific order. You eat your vegetables first, then you eat your your protein or meat, and then you eat your, vegetable. I'm sorry, your carbohydrate. And that is, from her testing, shows that, your glucose doesn't spike as much when you eat in that specific fashion. So that's one of the things I've added on, and I do think I really do think that works, because I do seem to see a difference. That horsefly is being annoying. Come on, horsefly. It's that time of year here in North Florida. Horseflies. But that's one of the other things that I got from the Glucose Revolution. Another thing she talks about that I haven't really tried is going for a 10-minute walk after you eat dinner or after you have a meal, because that's also supposed to reduce your glucose spike. And and her book is really more about reducing glucose spike and not specifically about losing weight. But she does talk about losing weight a little bit, and she does seriously caution you, if you're diabetic, to be careful with her methods, because her methods for somebody with diabetes could work out negatively for them unless they're doing that system through their doctor. And she recommends you talk to your doctor, kind of like I did. But I really think it's a good book. I recommend it to people. It gives you a different perspective on the foods that you eat and how they affect your body. Some of the things that she talks about, they seem to be pretty logical to me. And I look at books, like the Atkins diet. I've pulled some things from that. The Body for Life diet, I pulled some things from that. And her Glucose Revolution, I pull some ideas from that to find a system that works for me. And that's really what this book is about, is, and this YouTube channel is about. Oh, horsefly, come on. You don't have to beat me up. They do bite pretty hard here in Florida. And he is being really annoying. Okay, maybe that'll get him to go someplace else. And no, I'm not cutting these because I really want to inspire you. I threw this 70-pound backpack on, or backpack with 70 pounds of lead in it on, to remind myself. But I really want to encourage, and inspire others to find a healthy way, not necessarily the Deciding for Life way, to get their weight to a healthy level so they can feel how awesome I feel. Because it feels so awesome when I'm not 70 pounds overweight. And when I put this backpack down, it gives me a really good reminder of how awesome I do feel when I'm not carrying this extra 70 pounds around. And please excuse me, the horsefly has been kind of annoying and he's been nibbling on me while I'm talking to you. And I really don't want to mess up the video, so I'm kind of putting up with it a little bit. So, we're almost done with this 1 mile walk with 70 pounds in a backpack, 70 pounds of lead in a backpack, so that hopefully I can inspire you, if you're substantially overweight, to find a healthy way to get your weight to a lighter level to where you can feel how awesome I feel. Okay, horsefly, go away. One of the other downsides of being out in the woods, I guess, but I'll take it over being in the city any day. I didn't have horseflies at my old place in Jacksonville, but you know what? I'd rather have the horseflies than live in Jacksonville. But anyway, we're almost back up here, and when I get up here, I'll get rid of this backpack, give you a few closing comments, look through my notes here, make sure I didn't forget anything. And yes, I'm using notes because I can't remember everything when I'm going for a walk like this. It looks like I got everything in my notes from the chapter. So I did halfway decent today. Hope you don't mind my notes. I can't remember everything. And I really want to make sure I bring this information to people so that hopefully they can find a system that works for them. It doesn't have to be Deciding for Life. I don't use any one specific system. I use some ideas from Atkins. I use some ideas from Body for Life. I use some ideas from the Glucose Revolution. And Jim Rohn used to say, read all of them and take the good parts out of them and, leave the kooky stuff where it goes. But, this is a system, the Deciding for Life system, as I call it, that works very well for me. We're back to my workbench, and I am so happy to get rid of this 70 pounds. Whew. Actually, the backpack was on my shoulder a little off today and was making my shoulder a little bit numb. Okay, let's get some pretty scenery here of the woods and not my lame old building. All right, that feels so much better. It feels so awesome not to be carrying 70 pounds around, even if it is in a backpack. And yes, you can't, equate it specifically to carrying 70 pounds of extra fat around your body. But I can tell you, this is an excellent reminder of how much better I feel when I'm not carrying that extra 70 pounds around, because I know how much more I can do and how much more I can do so much better when I'm not carrying that 70 pounds around, how much more enjoyable my life is when I'm not carrying that extra 70 pounds around. And that 70-pound backpack is an excellent reminder. If you've enjoyed the content, please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell. If you know somebody that this content may, be able to help, please share it with them. Because if they're able to lose a substantial amount of weight like I have and feel as awesome as I do, they'll remember you for the rest of their life. Oh, if you have a question or you know something better than I do and want to explain it, okay, horsefly, leave a comment in the comment section. And I do answer all my comments, and if I do get a question on, the comment section, I'll try to make sure I bring it up in the next video. And if I do forget, remind me, because I do want to bring you the best content that I possibly can. I hope you've enjoyed the content, and may you have an awesome and happier and healthier and, yes, lighter day.